New at noon, the former Georgia State Trooper accused of causing a deadly wreck back in 2016 took the stand this morning testifying in his own trial. I'm Syria Sandlin.
And I'm Brooks Baptiste, Atlanta News First reporter Chelsea Bime for joining us live outside the Carroll County Courthouse. Chelsea, what do we know?
Well, Brooks, A.J. Scott is charged with vehicular homicide and reckless driving. Prosecutors grilled him on the stand today, asking if he saw the posted speed limit signs on the night of the wreck, and he said no. A.J. Scott is accused of driving around 90 miles per hour without any lights or sirens on the night that he collided with a Nissan Altima back in 2015. That car had 4 teenagers inside. 2 of them died, 17-year-old Kylie Lindsay and 16-year-old Isabella Chinchilla. On the stand today, Scott admitted he was not on his way to an emergency call on the night of the crash and said he did not see those speed limit signs. But the defense has been trying to prove over the last week that the group of teenagers were drinking that night, and they say that could have contributed to the crash and that the teenagers pulled out into oncoming traffic. This morning, a paramedic also testified that the driver of the Nissan Altima threw up in the back of an ambulance while being taken to the hospital and testified that it smelled like vodka. The jury has also seen photos of broken beer bottles and bottle caps found at the scene throughout the trial and the last week. Now, the jury has been dismissed here for the day by the judge. They will come back at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning for closing arguments and to begin deliberations. Reporting live in Carroll County, Chelsea Bime for Atlanta News First.